Welcome, brothers and sisters. Everyday stressors can really add up and impact us all, whether it's your job or your relationships or your kids or your neighbors or the pandemic or even the war in Ukraine. The list goes on, doesn't it? And all of these stressors in our lives can be triggers, and it can have us reacting in ways that, quite frankly, may not be beneficial to us or to others or even to our health. So the way we react or respond to situations really has a huge impact on your health and your relationships. And in this video, I'm going to be going over how love can drive out hate and how your intuition and kindness can give you clarity and help guide your decisions. Anger, blame, frustration, and hatred, all of these emotions tend to get stored in our bodies. If you don't allow these emotions to be processed properly, they do end up being stored in our bodies. And they have a vibrational signature that's all their own. It's kind of like a fingerprint. The vibrational signature that frustration and anger and all of those emotions produce, our bodies are actually built to handle. We are able to process these emotions. And actually, these emotions are intended to be good for us. For example, they can keep us from harm. But the problem, as you probably know and have figured out, is that when we're not processing them, we do end up storing them in our bodies, which can wreak all kinds of havoc. Personally, I've been dealing with autoimmune disease, and if you know anything about that or any kind of a chronic illness, and I mean any kind of a chronic illness, you know what I'm talking about. It's a direct result of storing these kinds of emotions in our bodies. So they can protect us from harm. But in the long term, if you're not processing these emotions, then they do become toxic. And they're toxic to your life, which means your relationships and ultimately your health if left unchecked. So I'd like you to think a minute about somebody or maybe even a situation that's frustrating you right now, or that's been angering you, or causing you anxiety in any way. Because we've all had these situations. I invite you to think a minute on it. Take a slow, deep breath. And you can close your eyes if you'd like. But just sit with this for a minute and give it some space. Just be with it. No judgments. Take another slow, nice, nourishing, deep breath. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Now, let's unwrap the anger or frustration that you're feeling. And often you'll find that underneath it is fear. Really, it's the fear at the root of these kinds of feelings. For example, I have somebody in my life right now who I love with all my heart, dearly. Love this person. And they're struggling right now with alcoholism. And it's a tough battle. And this person's been dealing with it for years. And there was a time, I can honestly say, that I would let anger get the best of me. I was angry that they didn't understand what they were doing to themselves. They didn't seem to care what they were doing to other people. A lot of frustration and anger goes along with that, right? I just lost an earring. That could cause frustration. Oh, deep breath. But you know, when I unpacked that anger and resentment for this person not stopping their drinking by now and wreaking so much havoc in their lives, and indeed my life and my family's life, yeah, I had a lot of resentment and anger. But when I unpacked that and looked deep down, I realized truly it is fear. Fear of losing them. Fear that they might die, and finally kill themselves. The loss, the fear of losing someone you love. That's a deep-rooted fear. And then after I named it and I realized that it was really fear that was underneath my frustration and anger, it helped soften it a little bit. And then I dove even deeper. And I realized that it wasn't just the fear of losing this person. It was even deeper than that. It was a deep-seated fear since childhood. Fear of abandonment. And that has everything to do with things that happened in my childhood. But you see how you can, if you pause a minute, you can take a look at it, and usually there will be an underlying fear. So I can acknowledge that really there's a fear that I'm afraid of losing them, and the fear of abandonment. So maybe you're not angry with someone right now or a situation, but maybe you're angry with being sick or having health issues. Personally, I found that to be true when I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease, and I also had cirrhosis of the liver, and I also needed total knee replacement. Some of you may know my story, but yeah, several years ago I was a mess, and I needed according to my doctors, I needed surgeries, I needed total knee replacements, I need both knees, and I needed liver transplant. At one point I was told, forget it, the list is too long, and just a mess, loaded with anxiety. And I got angry. I got really angry at my doctors. I got angry and frustrated. And once again, once I unpacked all that anger, I realized it was fear underneath all of it. I was scared for my life. I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to handle it, that I wasn't going to be able to handle the pain, and I wasn't going to be able to handle all the things the doctors were telling me that I needed to do. And then came all the fear of, wait a minute, if I'm going to learn how to heal myself, am I going to be able to handle that? Am I going to be able to really do it? All of those fears, can come out in the form of frustration and anger, and that's not good. So, I worried, would I have the courage to keep going and to completely heal myself from all of these things that my body was going through? The fear was loss of independence. You know, am I going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life? I mean, that's what the doctors were telling me. Am I going to have to be dependent on others to take care of me? Is somebody going to have to wipe my butt? You know, I mean, this is the fear and anxiety that can totally overwhelm you, and if you're not processing that right, it can actually compound and make things worse. So just by naming the root of your frustration or anger and finding that fear that is really underneath, gives it freedom. It gives that energy a chance to loosen up and begin to move so it doesn't stay stuck in your body. Goodness. It gives it permission to, you know, dislodge and start the process of being ousted. You know, it's not serving you to be lodged in your body like that. So naming it for what it really is, softens it. And this energy, well, we know that it causes anxiety to all of your systems. Literally all of your systems in your body begin to vibrate incoherently. And we know that when this happens, it causes disease. Well, dis-ease is literally what disease means. It's dis-ease of your vibrational patterns of your systems. And when we know that you have dis-ease or you have a disease, the underlying factor there is inflammation. And we've known this for a long time. So disease is literally a dis-ease in your vibrational field, which throws off all of your body's rhythms. And it's definitely not groovy. You know, when your vibration is thrown off like that, we can see it in the human biofield, your vibrational field in the laboratory now. And when I was a kid, I remember that auras were really not proven yet, at least in the mainstream, right? But now, I mean, we have all kinds of instruments now that we not only use, but we take for granted. I mean, think about it. We measure the electromagnetic field of your body, of people's bodies all the time. I mean, we have EEGs, right? The encephalograms that measure your brain waves. And we have cardiograms, measure the electricity and the waves that are going through the heart. There's MRIs, you know, magnetic resonance imaging. All of these wonderful inventions are taking advantage and or using our electric bodies to see what's going on. And we can tell when they're static or chaos or the waves aren't coherent and we are in disease or dis-ease. And we also have Kirlian photography, and that's where we can actually see the body's aura or the human biofield, which is your electromagnetic field around the entire body as it encompasses it. And it goes out about 6 foot all the way around your body. Kirlian photography, you can see this. So we're basically a giant electromagnetic field that grows with your emotions of love and kindness, and it contracts and makes us smaller when we are experiencing hatred or frustration or anxiety of any kind. So when someone is in distress or having anxiety, which is pretty much the same thing to your body, which means that it's going to start releasing stress hormones, cortisol being one of them, which causes inflammation. And then your electromagnetic field changes, and you become smaller. But when we experience love and kindness, our field expands. So it just goes to show that only love can drive out hate and these kind of negative emotions. I say negative, but actually they're not negative if you use them for the right reasons and process it. And like I say, don't store it in your body. So only love can drive out hate. Love is the universal language of all things, of all life. It's the language that allows things to grow and to thrive and to evolve. As above, so below. This is a wise thing to remember. As above, so below. Everything in the universe works together like a giant symphony with its own vibrational signature. And everything in it has its own vibrational signature, including you. All the planets have their own vibrational signature. And everything works together as a giant symphony, and you play one part of it. So zoom out for a minute with me, and on the macro level, and think of the solar system. All the planets are in harmony with each other and the sun. And if any one of those were to get out of tune or out of harmony, out of sync, out of rhythm, it would throw the whole system into chaos, right? So that wouldn't be good. No, that would not be good. Certainly not groovy. All right, so zoom in for a minute to Gaia, Mother Earth. If you zoom down and check her out a minute, you can see what we're doing to her. You can see all the destruction of the rainforests and the oceans. And when humans are polluting and unkind to Gaia, Mother Earth, it throws her rhythms off and makes her sick. And then the animals get sick. And if that vibration is allowed to be stored in Mother Earth like that and not processed out, species can become extinct, plants and animals. So that's an extreme example of these vibrations causing harm. As above, so below. So zoom even more down to a community that's experiencing unrest, or even worse, war, right? Like what we have going on right now in the Ukraine. There's vibrations of hate everywhere right now. In Ukraine and in Russia, and this ripples all out across the planet. It affects everybody. And these are ripples of hatred and sadness and despair, and it's very real. So now let's zoom in even closer, deep, deep, deep inside your body. As above, so below. If your thoughts, brothers and sisters, if your thoughts are full of frustration, resentments, or even hatred, this anger not only affects your aura that's around you, but it also affects the vibrations that are touching your vibrations. It affects everybody around you. But as above, so below, it also affects all the systems inside you. Right? Which then ultimately, of course, affects your health. And when your system is flooded with stress hormones from being upset all the time, and you're giving it a steady drip, drip, drip of these stress hormones day in and day out, you can expect to begin to see signs of disease or disease. Same thing, right? And so these are all signs that you're probably not processing your frustrations, and that instead you're storing them. A wise person once said, being angry and full of resentment towards another person is like drinking poison and hoping that they get sick. Right? It doesn't make sense, does it? But that's ultimately what it does to you. Practice shifting your reactions to situations that you find frustrating to responding. See, there's a difference between reacting and responding. If you switch your reaction from one of frustration and anger to one of responding with love and kindness, either externally or internally, or ideally both, right? Then that is really going to help you focus your kindness. Of course there's boundaries, right? Boundaries are important. If you are around someone who's being abusive to you, then you need to direct your kindness towards yourself and get the hell out of there, right? I'm talking about practice shifting your reaction time in normal situations with, someone that you just live with every day or that you work with every day, and practice responding with kindness. And even if you don't do it out loud externally, practice in here. Open your willingness and courage to feel vulnerable and find the underlying fear. Identify it. Unwrap that fear that may really be what's influencing your behavior and your reactions. Pause just a minute, and then you can identify the underlying fear when you feel yourself begin to feel angry or frustrated. When you pause a minute and do this identification of the underlying fear, it allows your compassion to begin to flow. When you open your heart and allow a little bit of empathy, put yourself in the other person's shoes and see what they might be feeling and what their fears might be. When you do that, you can grow your own courage, which then begins to actually rewire your brain. And it retrains your thought processes. It retrains the synapses, the actual neurons in your brain, to allow caring and kindness become the default instead of reacting with anger or frustration or whatever the reaction is that hasn't been serving you. Practice makes perfect. My dancing teacher used to say that. I took tap dancing and ballet dancing and acrobats and the whole 9 yards when I was a kid, from kindergarten all the way through high school. And my dancing teacher always said, practice makes perfect, which used to frustrate me. But I know that, she didn't mean really, that I had to be perfect. Because I know that there's no such thing as perfect, right? But there's nothing wrong with striving to better yourself, right? And to be the best you, the best that you can be. There's nothing wrong with that. So I invite you to try and catch yourself when you're feeling frustrated. The next time this happens, remind yourself that you have a choice, number one, right? And when you pause a minute before allowing the anger to creep in, it opens up a lot more choices that you can then look at and choose from, instead of just the go-to normal frustration feeling. When you feel yourself getting triggered, just take a minute and pause and see what fears might really be underneath that. And so when you proactively, make space for empathy and kindness towards yourself and others, it ripples out and spreads into the field. As above, so below. And now your conscious intention of love is radiating into the field, within and without, both. The radiating of love and kindness goes in all directions, inward too. So learning different ways, new ways to deal, just deal with life and deal with life's frustrations and things that may be causing you anxiety, and allowing yourself to identify, what's really the truth. Just only helps you to become wiser and more intuitive, really. Learning new ways to deal with anger and frustration and becoming wiser and more intuitive. Yeah, that's really groovy.